Hi, this is Yarrow here from Entrepreneur's Journey, again talking to you about the services arbitrage business model. So this is actually part 3 in a free training series that I'm delivering to you over these videos and in blog posts that I'm publishing on my blog. If you have not got access to these yet, make sure you go to servicesarbitrage.com. You'll see the link just near this video. And you can go through part 1 and part 2 and part 3 that I just released, so you have the entire series of how to sell services online, this new business model that you can launch. Now, in fact, I've just published the 3rd article in this series, which is very much a how-to post that gives you the 7 steps that I recommend you work through today in order to launch a new services arbitrage business yourself. Now, I haven't got time to teach you all 7 steps, but what I'd like to do now is share my story of how I came to the conclusion of how I started my business, what service I would focus on, and then ramp up the growth of my business, because that's actually one of the key decisions you have to make is what service are you going to sell online to run your business around. So when I first had the decision to launch a service arbitrage business, as you know if you went through part 1 and part 2 in this series, I came about this business opportunity by learning about other people selling services online, reading a book about eBay, which taught me about the power of the many-to-many business model, and then also reading a lot more other books to become familiar with concepts like leverage and how to build a business that has systems so it could run without you. So I knew all this, I had all this knowledge, but it was time to put the rubber to the road, so to speak, and actually build a business and test this theory out, see if I can make this basically passive income business work and become my full-time income stream. So when I had this initial idea, I started looking for potential services I could sell. Now, I'll be honest with you, back then when I first started thinking about this new business idea, I really wasn't sure which direction I would go to, and I kind of made some beginner mistakes. One very obvious beginner mistake I made was deciding to actually offer 4 different services from this new business as a starting point. Today, as I talk about in this article, I do recommend you narrow into 1 service to first test, rather than try and test 4 at the same time as I did. But that's what ended up working for me. That's how I began. And how I came up with the idea for these services were basically just things I knew about and people I had access to, resources to people who could deliver the services. So I knew that because I was studying in university, people needed editing services, so I was considering offering editing. And I thought if I'm going to offer editing, I might offer editing to businesses as well. I also had access to a language translation database of contractors who were really good at doing language translations. They were certified. So I thought I could possibly offer language translation services as well. And then lastly, I thought, why not? I'm going to try offering resume editing as well, because, if I'm working with students, they're going to need a job. They're probably going to have to put together a resume. So as you can see, it wasn't the most detailed, well thought out idea generation process for services. I wouldn't recommend you do what I did, but I was new, I was just figuring this out, and there really weren't any models to follow like I'm teaching you today. But that's what I did. So I decided to build a website around these 4 services, a really basic website. I only had basic website skills. So I put together this website, and it had 4 pages. I talked about editing services for students, editing services for businesses, language translation services, and resume editing. I then did a tiny bit of marketing to promote my new website online, and with fingers crossed I would get a customer. It took a little while, but a few months later I actually had my first customer come through to that website and asked to purchase a service. They actually wanted to buy language translation, in particular translating a Spanish document into English. So what I did was I said, I'll get you a quote. They gave me the document digitally. I took it to my database of potential contractors. I found the Spanish to English translators, and I asked about 3 of them to send me a quote back to translate this document. So how long it would take, how much they would charge me. I took those 3 quotes, and then I decided on the best quote, which ended up being someone who would charge me $200 to do the job. What I did then was take that quote and add a profit margin of $100, which I would keep. So I then took a $300 quote back to my client. The client said, yes, great, let's do that job. They paid me. I told my contractor they could start work on the language translation. They finished the work, returned the document. I paid $200 to my contractor, and I kept $100 myself. So that was my first ever test, real life test of the services arbitrage business model, and it was profitable from day one. I made $100 in my first job, which is something I really love about this business model, because you only lose money when you make money. You only have to pay someone to do a job when you're getting money from a client. So you really should make money from day one from the first project you do. So that was my first test project. Now you'd think because that worked so well, I would then go and build around the language translation niche. But I actually didn't end up doing that. I continued to promote my business, and over time, and we're talking about a good year here, I actually learned more about the services I was offering in terms of how much demand there was for these services, how I liked working with the clients, what it was like to work with the contractors. And I started to narrow down on a sweet spot, a specialty that I decided I liked the best. And that ended up being student editing. Now the reason why was, first of all, resume editing turned out to be a no-go. I got no clients for resume work, so I scrapped that one. However, I did get work in all the other three services. I had some corporate clients who wanted me to do business editing, but I didn't really like working with the corporate clients because there was a lot of bureaucracy, a lot of meetings with managers. I even had a meeting once with the CEO of a large educational institute in Australia in order to convince them that they should hire me for a big job. But I really didn't like this sort of face-to-face client relationship building process to get customers. I liked online business. So that's why I actually liked student editing the best. So language translation was good, student editing was good, but what I found that student editing would be better for me because it was a real specialty. I couldn't see a way to differentiate myself in terms of language translation. But if I focused 100% on essays and thesis for students, I could become a real specialist company. That's exactly what I did. So I started to refine my message. I completely changed my website to remove the other three services and focus only on student editing. I started to build up a nice database of editors who I could contract with. And I went on to build my six-figure business focused on student editing as my main service. And that became really what my business was about. And it was at the point when I decided to focus that I really noticed the difference. Now I started to make a bunch of other changes to this business as I continued to grow it, many of which I talk about in this 7-step article that I recommend you go read, which you can get if you go to servicesarbitrage.com and subscribe. I'll send you all of the parts of this free training series. I talk about things like coming up with packages to sell services, so you don't have to do this negotiation process. It really speeds up and gives you the ability to automate your services arbitrage business. I also talk about bringing on a virtual assistant, a customer support person who basically took me out of the job. I no longer needed to do anything to run my business because prior to that I was the person sending the emails and doing the customer support. But once I removed myself, that business pretty much ran itself. So I talk about from that point, from choosing your first service to all the way automating and hiring people to run it for you in the 7-step series. I recommend you go through the first and second part in the series before you read this third part though, so you understand what services arbitrage is, what leverage is, what systems are, and how these three things turn into this formula, this 7-step process for launching your own services arbitrage business. And you can get all of that for free along with these videos if you just go to servicesarbitrage.com and enter your email address and your phone number onto that page. I'll send you an email and a text message for all the free training resources so you won't miss anything. And I hope you get a lot from it, and I hope you can use these materials to launch your own services arbitrage business. I'd love to hear if you end up going forward and have a success story to share with me. All right, I'm going to call it a day on this video. I hope you got something out of it. Make sure you go to servicesarbitrage.com to sign up for this free training series so you get all the content. My name is Yaro Stark, and I'll talk to you on a future video very soon. Bye-bye.